Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. Blood looks black under the harsh glare of the winter moon, contrasting violently with the pristine, unforgiving white of the snow. Julian didn't feel his toes anymore. In fact, he hadn't felt them for the last 3 miles, but stopping wasn't an option. Stopping meant death, and death was a luxury he couldn't afford. Not with the 2 small, shivering burdens strapped to his chest and back. He stumbled, his knees hitting the ice with a sickening crunch that vibrated up his spine. But he didn't scream. He didn't have the breath for it. The wind howled through the skeletal trees of the Blackwood forest, a shrieking banshee that masked the sound of his own ragged, desperate gasps. He looked up, his vision swimming with exhaustion and the creeping gray of hypothermia, and saw it. The Iron Manor. It was a monstrosity of obsidian stone and Gothic spires, looming against the night sky like a dormant beast, surrounded by a fence of wrought iron spikes that looked designed to impale angels. "Just a little more," Julian whispered, his voice a broken rasp against the woolen scarf wrapped around the child on his chest. The 4-year-old, Leo, was eerily silent, terrified into a catatonic state, while his twin sister, Luna, clung to Julian's back, her small whimpers lost to the gale. They said a monster lived here. They said the alpha of Iron Manor, Lord Caelan Vane, had been exiled from high society for a savagery that couldn't be tamed. A man who crushed business rivals and bones with equal indifference. Julian didn't care about monsters. He was running from devils he knew. He would take his chances with the devil he didn't. He dragged himself to the massive gates. His hands, raw and bleeding from the thorns of the underbrush, grasped the icy metal bars. He didn't have the strength to shout. He barely had the strength to stand. With the last reserve of his fading consciousness, he grabbed the heavy iron knocker on the pedestrian gate and let it fall. Once, twice. Then, the darkness rose up to meet him, and Julian Hallow fell into the snow, curling his body instinctively around the children to shield them one last time. The silence of the study was absolute, broken only by the crackle of the fireplace and the rhythmic ticking of a grandfather clock. Caelan Vane sat in a high-backed leather chair, a glass of amber whiskey untouched in his hand. He was a man composed of sharp angles and terrifying stillness, his eyes the color of tempered steel, his hair a sweep of midnight over a face that was devastatingly handsome but ruined by an expression of perpetual, icy boredom. He was a prime alpha, a designation that placed him at the apex of the food chain, yet he lived in self-imposed isolation. The city whispered that he was mad. The truth was far simpler. He was simply intolerant of weakness, and the world was infested with it. A light blinked on his security console. Motion at the main gate. Caelan frowned, placing the glass down. No one came here. The perimeter sensors were rigged to emit a subsonic frequency that deterred even stray dogs. For a human or shifter, to be at the gate meant they were either incredibly stupid or already dying. He tapped the screen. The grainy night vision feed flickered to life. A lump in the snow. A frantic heat signature fading rapidly. He should leave it. The storm was a natural cull. The weak died, the strong survived. That was the law of nature he respected above all else. But then, the camera zoomed in slightly, driven by the automated tracking system. He saw the bundle move. A small, pale hand reached out from beneath the fallen figure, patting the unconscious face. "Children," Caelan cursed, a low, guttural sound that rumbled in his chest like distant thunder. He stood, his towering frame casting a long shadow across the room. He detested children. They were sticky, loud, and irrational. But Caelan Vane did not kill pups. Even wolves had standards. He moved with the predatory grace of an apex hunter, sweeping his fur-lined coat from the rack. He strode through the empty, echoing halls of the manor, throwing the heavy front doors open to the biting wind. When he reached the gate, the snow had already begun to bury the intruders. He kicked the gate open, the metal groaning in protest. He looked down. The adult was an Omega. He could smell the faint, distressed scent of ozone and bruised lilies even through the blizzard. A male Omega, painfully thin, his clothes threadbare and soaked. He was curled around 2 lumps. Kalen knelt, the snow soaking his expensive trousers instantly. He grabbed the Omega by the shoulder and turned him over. The face was pale as death, marred by a fresh bruise blooming across the cheekbone, but beneath the grime and injury, there was a delicate, haunting beauty. Dark lashes fluttered against translucent skin. "Please," the Omega whispered, not opening his eyes, hallucinating in the grip of the cold. "Take them. Eat me. Just take them." Kalen froze. "Eat me." The Omega thought he was a literal beast. "Don't be ridiculous," Kalen growled. He scooped the Omega up. It was effortless. The man weighed nothing, a bag of hollow bones and desperate hope. The 2 children, realizing they were being moved, clung to the unconscious man with a ferocity that surprised the alpha. Kalen simply scooped them up too, balancing the bundle in his massive arms. "One night," Kalen muttered to the howling wind as he turned back toward the manor. "You have 1 night of charity. Then you're gone." Warmth. That was the first thing Julian registered. It wasn't the stinging, burning warmth of a slap, but a pervasive soft heat that seemed to seep into his marrow. He inhaled sharply, expecting the smell of mold and damp basement, but instead, his senses were flooded with cedar, wood smoke, and a rich, spicy musk that made his inner Omega purr instinctively. His eyes snapped open. He was lying on a bed that was larger than his entire apartment back in the slums. Velvet canopy, silk sheets, a ceiling painted with storm clouds. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through the comfort. "Leo? Luna?" he croaked, sitting up. His head spun and he clutched his chest. He was wearing a shirt that wasn't his. A massive, silk button-down that hung off his shoulders like a robe. "They are eating. Try not to make a scene." The voice came from the corner of the room. Julian whipped his head around. Sitting in a velvet armchair, reading a leather-bound book, was a man who looked like he had been carved from marble and nightmares. Kalen Vane. Julian recognized him instantly from the terrifying stories whispered in the lower districts. The exile. The cold king. Julian scrambled backward, pressing his back against the headboard. "Lord Vane. I apologize. I didn't mean to trespass, I just needed—" "You collapsed," Kalen said, not looking up from his book. "At my gate. With 2 pups. Are they?" Kalen finally looked up. His eyes were intense, glowing faintly with the inner light of a prime alpha. It was a gaze that could bring lesser men to their knees, a crushing weight of dominance. Julian trembled, but he didn't look away. He couldn't. "They are in the kitchen. My automated service droids are preparing them soup. They are unharmed, though the boy bit my butler drone." Julian let out a breath he didn't know he was holding, his shoulders sagging. Thank you, my lord. I will take them and leave immediately. I just need my clothes." "Your clothes were rags," Kalen said flatly. "They were burned. And you are not leaving." Julian's heart hammered against his ribs. I'm not. There is a blizzard outside that would freeze the marrow in your bones within minutes. The roads are impassable." Kalen closed his book with a snap that echoed like a gunshot. He stood and walked toward the bed. Julian shrank back, his instincts screaming predator, but his Omega biology whispered safety. It was a confusing, dizzying duality. Kalen stopped at the foot of the bed. He looked Julian up and down, his gaze clinical yet burning. "You are malnourished. You have 3 fractured ribs healed poorly. Bruising consistent with manual strangulation on your neck. And your children show signs of long-term caloric deficiency." Kalen leaned forward, placing his hands on the footboard. "Who is hunting you, Omega?" Julian swallowed hard. "No one. We just fell on hard times." "Liar," Kalen said softly. The word wasn't angry. It was a statement of fact. "You smell of fear. And you smell of the Western Pack. Specifically, the territory controlled by Alpha Silas Thorne." At the mention of the name, Julian flinched so violently he nearly fell off the bed. Kaelin's eyes narrowed. Thorn. That explains the bruising. He likes to leave marks. Please, Julian whispered, clutching the silk sheets. If he finds us here, he'll kill you. He wants the twins. Kaelin let out a short, dark laugh. It was a terrifying sound. Kill me? Thorn is a mongrel dog who thinks he's a wolf. He couldn't kill me on his best day, and certainly not to get to my guests. He emphasized the word guests. Why? Julian asked, his voice trembling. Why help us? You don't know us. I'm nothing to you. Kaelin stared at him. For a moment, the mask of indifference slipped. He inhaled, and Julian saw the alpha's nostrils flare, taking in Julian's scent. The tension in the room thickened, becoming almost palpable. The air grew heavy with pheromones. Dominance, possession, and something sweeter, darker. You are not nothing, Kaelin said, his voice dropping an octave. You are in my house, under my roof. That makes you mine to protect. For tonight. He turned abruptly, the moment broken. Get up. Wash. Eat. If you vomit on my rugs, you clean it up. The kitchen was a marvel of chrome and steel, but the scene within it was incongruous. Two small children, looking like drowned rats in oversized t-shirts, were sitting on the counter, swinging their legs while a robotic arm dispensed warm broth into bowls. When Julian entered, wobbling slightly, Leo and Luna dropped their spoons and launched themselves at him. Jules! Jules! Luna cried, burying her face in his stomach. The metal man gave us bread. It's good, Jules, Leo added, his mouth full. Hot. Julian sank to his knees, embracing them, checking them over with frantic hands. They were warm. They were fed. Tears pricked his eyes, hot and stinging. He looked up to find Kaelin leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed over his broad chest. Eat, Kaelin commanded, nodding toward a bowl on the island. You look like you're about to faint again. Julian stood, helping the twins back to their food, and took the bowl. It was a rich beef stew. The first spoonful tasted like salvation. He ate slowly, conscious of the alpha watching him. Why does Thorn want them? Kaelin asked suddenly. Julian froze, the spoon halfway to his mouth. He looked at the twins. They were distracted by the robot. They aren't his, Julian said quietly. They're my sister's. She died in childbirth. The father. We don't know who the father was. But Thorn. He believes they are enigmas. The silence in the kitchen became deafening. Enigmas. A rare genetic mutation. Alphas who could not be commanded. Who possessed strength beyond the natural limit. They were coveted by packs as weapons of war. Are they? Kaelin asked, his face unreadable. They are 4 years old, Julian snapped, a sudden flare of protective anger overriding his fear. They are children. They like drawing and warm milk. They are not weapons. Kaelin's eyebrows rose slightly. He seemed impressed by the outburst. Thorn doesn't care about what they like. He cares about what they can become. I know, Julian whispered, the anger draining away, leaving only exhaustion. That's why I ran. He wanted to put them in the training pits. I couldn't let him. So you ran into a blizzard to die, Kaelin summarized. Better to die free than live as a dog in a cage, Julian retorted. Kaelin pushed off the doorframe and walked toward him. He moved into Julian's personal space, towering over him. Julian had to crane his neck to look up. The size difference was comical. Kaelin could snap him in half with one hand. But instead Kaelin reached out. His large hand, calloused and warm, brushed a stray lock of hair from Julian's forehead. The touch was electric. A jolt of pleasure shot down Julian's spine, making his knees weak. You have spirit, little Omega, Kaelin murmured. Stupid, reckless spirit. But spirit nonetheless. His thumb grazed Julian's cheekbone, lingering on the bruise. Kaelin's eyes darkened, the pupils blowing wide. Did Thorn do this? One of his lieutenants, Julian breathed, mesmerized by the alpha's gaze. When I tried to leave, I will break his hand, Kaelin said casually, as if discussing the weather. And then I will break the rest of him. Julian blinked. Why? Because, Kaelin leaned in, his lips inches from Julian's ear. His voice a low rumble that vibrated in Julian's chest. I find that I am incredibly possessive of things I find in the snow. The proximity was overwhelming. Julian's scent glands flared, releasing a wave of distress-turned arousal. Kaelin inhaled it greedily, his control slipping. For an alpha who had lived in isolation for years, the sudden influx of a compatible Omega, a highly compatible Omega, was intoxicating. Go to bed, Kaelin said abruptly, pulling away as if burned. Take the pups. Guest room on the second floor. Do not come out until morning. He turned and stormed out of the kitchen, leaving Julian breathless and trembling, his heart racing like a trapped bird. The night passed in a blur of anxiety and comfort. Julian slept with the twins between him and the door, a small knife he'd stolen from the kitchen tucked under his pillow. But no one came. The house was silent, save for the wind. Morning brought a blinding white light through the windows. The storm had broken. Julian woke to the sound of engines. Roaring, angry engines. He scrambled out of bed, rushing to the window. Outside the iron gates, 3 black SUVs were idling. Men in dark tactical gear were swarming the entrance. And standing at the front, shouting at the intercom, was a man Julian knew all too well. Silas Thorne. Terror, cold and absolute, washed over Julian. He had found them. Jules? Leo rubbed his eyes, sitting up. Who's outside? Shoo! Julian commanded, his voice shaking. Get in the closet. Now, both of you. Do not make a sound. He shoved the confused children into the walk-in wardrobe and piled blankets over them. He grabbed the kitchen knife. It was pathetic against guns and alphas, but he would not go down without blood. He heard the front door of the manor open. Heavy footsteps echoed in the hall downstairs. Julian crept to the bedroom door and cracked it open. Kaelin was standing in the foyer. He was wearing a black turtleneck and slacks, looking impeccable and bored. He held a cup of coffee in one hand. The front doors burst open. Silas Thorne marched in, flanked by 4 guards. Thorne was a large man, brutish and scarred, radiating an aggressive, sour pheromone that smelled of rotting meat and sulfur. Vane! Thorne bellowed. You harbor a fugitive of the Iron Claw Pack. Hand him over, and I won't burn this gothic shithole to the ground. Kaelin took a sip of his coffee. He didn't even blink. Thorne, Kaelin said, his voice smooth and dangerously calm. You didn't wipe your feet. Don't play games with me, exile, Thorne sneered, stepping forward. We tracked the Omega's scent to your gate. Give me the boy and the brats. They are property of my pack. Property, Kaelin repeated, tasting the word with distaste. I was under the impression that slavery was illegal, Silas. Even for bottom feeders like you. They are enigmas, Thorne roared. They belong to the strongest. Ah, Kaelin set his coffee cup down on a side table. Strength. He began to walk down the stairs. 1 step at a time. Slow. Deliberate. You seem to be under a misconception, Silas, Kaelin said softly. You think you are a predator because you bite those smaller than you. You think you are strong because you have a pack of sycophants behind you. Kaelin reached the bottom of the stairs. He stood 10 feet from Thorne. Let me correct you. Kaelin released his pheromones. It wasn't a wave. It was a tsunami. It was the pressure of the deep ocean, the crushing weight of a collapsing star. It was the aura of a prime alpha, honed by years of isolation and focus. The guards behind Thorne instantly dropped to their knees, gagging, their instincts forcing them into submission. They couldn't help it. Their bodies recognized a king. Thorne staggered back, clutching his chest, his face turning purple. He tried to growl, to fight back with his own aura, but it was like holding up a candle against a hurricane. You came into my home. Kaelin's voice was no longer smooth. It was a growl that shook the window panes. You threatened my guests. You hunted a starving Omega and children through the snow. Kalen took a step forward. Thorn fell to one knee, wheezing. I am an alpha. Thorn gasped. You are a mistake, Kalen corrected. Kalen moved faster than the eye could follow. He grabbed Thorn by the throat and lifted him off the ground with one hand. Thorn kicked and clawed, but Kalen's grip was iron. The Omega is mine, Kalen snarled, his eyes glowing a vibrant, terrifying gold. The children are mine. If you ever, come within 10 miles of them again, I will hunt you down. And I will not be civilized about it. He threw Thorn through the open doors. The man flew 10 feet, landing in a heap in the snow. Get out, Kalen commanded. The command rippled through the air, a physical force. The guards scrambled up, dragging their wheezing leader, and fled back to the SUVs. Tires spun on the ice, and within seconds, they were gone. Kalen stood in the doorway watching them leave. His chest heaved slightly, the only sign of his exertion. You can come down now, Julian, Kalen called out, not turning around. Julian, who had been watching from the top of the stairs, paralyzed with awe, slowly descended. He still held the knife, but his grip was loose. Kalen closed the doors and turned. The golden glow in his eyes faded back to steel gray, but the intensity remained. You fought them, Julian whispered. I took out the trash, Kalen corrected. He looked at the knife in Julian's hand and smirked. Were you planning to help? I was planning to die trying, Julian said honestly. Kalen's expression softened. He walked up the stairs until he was eye level with Julian. He gently took the knife from Julian's hand and set it on the railing. No more dying, Kalen said firmly. I told you, you have one night. Julian's heart sank. Right? The night is over. We should pack. The night is over, Kalen agreed. Which means the contract has changed. He reached out, his hand cupping Julian's cheek. This time he didn't pull away. He stepped closer, invading Julian's space, wrapping him in that scent of wood smoke and safety. The snow is deep, Kalen murmured, his thumb tracing Julian's lower lip. The world is cold, and my house is too large for one man. Julian's breath hitched. What are you saying? I'm saying the twins need a yard to run in. I'm saying you need to eat more than once a day. Kalen leaned his forehead against Julian's. And I'm saying that if you leave, I will have to chase you. And I hate running. You want us to stay? Julian asked, tears spilling over. Why? We're trouble. You're my trouble, Kalen corrected. My headache. My pack. He kissed Julian. It wasn't a tentative, testing kiss. It was a claiming. It was possessive and hungry, a seal on a contract written in pheromones and fate. Julian melted into it, his hands clutching Kalen's shirt, his soul finally stopping its endless running. When they broke apart, Kalen wiped the tears from Julian's face. Go get the twins, Kalen said, his voice rough. Tell them they live here now. And tell them if they bite the butler drone again, I'm docking their allowance. Julian laughed, a wet, choked sound of pure relief. Yes, Alpha. Kalen watched him run back up the stairs, a rare, genuine smile touching his lips. He turned back to the window, looking out at the pristine snow. The storm was over, but for Kalen Vane, life had just begun. And that is how the viper tamed the wolf, not with chains, but with a shelter from the storm. If you enjoyed seeing Kalen unleash his dominance to protect his new family, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments. Is it true love if it starts with a desperate bargain? Or is safety the purest form of romance? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then,